Indoor Matters with Damien and Sarah.
Welcome to Indoor Matters Podcast, the place where we tackle what really matters for your health indoors. I'm Damien.
And I'm Sarah. Hi, everyone.
Great to have you. On Indoor Matters today, we're looking pretty closely at something that could be lurking in your drinking water. You might not even know it's there. We're talking about endocrine-disrupting compounds. EDCs for short.
Right.
And honestly, once you start to understand what these are, you realize they could have a pretty big impact on your well-being.
Absolutely. It's surprising how these EDCs can interfere with our hormones, in ways that are subtle but really significant.
So today, we'll get into what they are, where they're coming from, their effects, and crucially, what we can actually do about them.
Sounds good.
But first, we really want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, Sani Service. They're the only indoor environmental health quality management company right here in Dubai.
Been around since 2009.
Exactly. Since 2009, Sani Service has been really dedicated, researching and bringing in the best technologies to make our indoor spaces healthier.
Air, water, surfaces, they cover it all.
They really do. If you have concerns, give them a call at 04321-5505, or you can check out their website, www.saniservice.com.
And don't forget.
Oh, right. Mention Indoor Matters when you contact them. You'll get a special discount on their indoor science testing services. Definitely worth checking out.
Okay, so back to these endocrine-disrupting compounds, these EDCs. What exactly are we talking about here? What makes them disruptive?
Well, from what I understand, it's a really broad category. Lots of different chemicals, basically. And the key thing is they interfere with our hormonal systems, our endocrine system.
Right, the system that controls mood, growth, metabolism, reproduction, all the big stuff.
And what's really concerning is they can do this even at incredibly low levels, like tiny amounts.
Yeah, that low dose effect is, it's a major part of the concern. It's not like needing a huge dose of poison. These can mimic our natural hormones or sometimes block them.
So they mess up the signals?
Exactly. They disrupt that delicate hormonal balance our bodies need. Think of it like throwing static into your radio signal.
Okay, that makes sense. And these aren't some rare chemicals found only in labs.
Not at all. They're quite widespread. We find them in surface water, even in treated drinking water sometimes.
Because they're used in so many things.
Yes. Plastics, pesticides used in agriculture, industrial chemicals, even some medicines. They get out into the environment and eventually into water sources.
So today, we want to break down some of the main types, right? Look at the health risks, why normal water treatment might not fully remove them.
And then talk about a specific technology, the Aquaporin A2O Pure system, and how it tackles this EDC problem head-on.
Okay, let's start with one people might have heard of, BPA, bisphenol A.
Ah, yes, BPA. It's an industrial chemical. You find it in polycarbonate plastics, those hard, clear ones, and also in epoxy resins.
Like linings in food cans and bottle tops.
Exactly. And the problem is it doesn't always stay put. It can leach out.
Into water. From plastic waste, landfill runoff, that sort of thing.
Precisely. And the main concern with BPA is that it acts like estrogen in the body. It's an estrogen mimic.
So it impersonates a key hormone. What does that do?
Well, it can interfere with some really basic processes, especially things like brain development and behavior. There's quite a bit of research linking BPA exposure, particularly early life exposure, to things like anxiety, hyperactivity, attention problems in kids.
Wow, that's definitely concerning for parents. And it's not just about kids, is it?
No, unfortunately not. BPA has also been linked to reproductive issues in adults.
For both women and men.
Yes. In women, things like PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, fertility problems, maybe even increased risk for certain cancers like breast and ovarian cancer.
And for men?
For men, studies suggest links to reduced sperm quality and at higher exposure levels, potentially issues with sexual function too.
And the fact that this can happen from long-term exposure to just low doses?
Yeah.
Maybe from our drinking water every day? That's the unsettling part.
It really is.
Especially, living here in Dubai.
Yeah.
We all use so many plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
And think about them sitting in the heat. That potential for leaching feels, very relevant here.
That's a really important point. The heat definitely doesn't help when it comes to plastics potentially leaching chemicals. Okay, next up, phthalates.
Phthalates, right. Another group of chemicals that seem to be everywhere.
They really are. They're plasticizers, added to PVC and other plastics to make them soft and flexible.
So food packaging, kids' toys, cosmetics, even medical tubing.
Yep. All of those. They're so common that studies find their breakdown products, their metabolites in pretty much everyone. Urine samples, blood samples, even amniotic fluid in breast milk.
That's incredible. So how do phthalates disrupt hormones?
They tend to interfere with our sex hormones, think testosterone and estrogen. They can reduce their levels. And they can also block the action of thyroid hormones.
And so thyroid hormones are crucial for metabolism, right? And development.
Absolutely. So when you disrupt these pathways, the potential health impacts are, well, pretty broad.
Like what, specifically?
We're talking about reproductive toxicity, reduced fertility in men and women, increased risk of miscarriage, pregnancy complications, maybe even earlier menopause. And there's even a suggestion, this is really worrying, that phthalate exposure might have epigenetic effects, meaning it could potentially affect the health of, future generations.
That's a heavy thought. And it's not just reproduction.
No. They've also been linked to metabolic problems, insulin resistance, obesity, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, even type 2 diabetes risk.
So even tiny amounts in drinking water could contribute to these bigger health issues over time.
That's the concern, the cumulative effect of low-dose exposure. And again, thinking about Dubai, we rely so much on air conditioning. AC systems have a lot of plastic components. It makes you wonder about potential indoor exposure routes too, besides just water.
It really does. Okay, moving on. Another source of EDCs in water, pesticides.
Yes. Pesticides are, by design, biologically active compounds, so it's perhaps not a huge surprise that some can also mess with our endocrine systems.
And they get into water through farming, right? Runoff, leaching through soil?
Primarily, yes. Agricultural runoff is a big one, and leaching into groundwater.
And we've seen effects in wildlife from these.
Definitely. There's a well-known herbicide, atrazine, very common. It's been shown to disrupt endocrine function in amphibians, fish, even causing male frogs to develop female characteristics at environmentally relevant levels.
That's disturbing.
Then you have older ones, like organochlorine insecticides, DDT, for example, banned mostly, but they stick around for ages. They're estrogenic, linked to reproductive problems and cancers in animals.
Are newer pesticides okay then?
Not necessarily. Even some more modern organophosphate pesticides have been implicated in hormone disruption. And studies in humans have suggested links between certain pesticides in drinking water and issues like lower sperm counts or problems during pregnancy.
What about exposure early in life?
There's evidence suggesting that prenatal exposure in the womb to some endocrine-disrupting pesticides could lead to developmental problems or hormonal imbalances that show up later during adolescence.
So reproductive health is a key concern here too.
Absolutely. And again, for us here in Dubai, we import a lot of our fresh produce, so potential pesticide residues in the source water used to grow that food, or maybe even directly in our water sources. It's another factor to keep in mind.
Definitely food for thought. Okay, let's shift slightly. What about pharmaceuticals and synthetic hormones? How do they get into the water?
Mostly through us, actually. When we take medications, our bodies don't always fully absorb or break them down. The remainder gets excreted and ends up in wastewater.
And sewage treatment doesn't always remove them.
Often not completely, especially for certain compounds.
Yeah.
Synthetic hormones are a big concern here, particularly 17-ethanyl-estradiol, that's EE2, the synthetic estrogen used in many birth control pills.
And these are potent, even in tiny amounts.
Incredibly potent. EE2 can cause feminization in male fish developing female traits, reduce fertility at concentrations down to parts per trillion. Tiny, tiny amounts.
That really shows how active these things are. What about potential effects on humans from water exposure?
The levels in drinking water are generally very low, but the worry is about chronic, lifelong exposure. Could it affect fertility? Could it affect the timing of puberty? We don't have all the answers, but there are concerns.
And it's not just hormones, right? Other drugs too.
Right. There are questions about residues of antidepressants, anti-seizure drugs, even hormones given to livestock that might make their way into water and potentially have unintended effects on aquatic life, or even us.
And conventional treatment often isn't designed to target these specific molecules.
Exactly. Which means chronic exposure to a mix of these compounds is a possibility.
Okay, let's talk industrial chemicals, but maybe not the plastic-related ones we already covered.
Sure. There are things like alkyl phenols. Non-L-phenol is an example, used in detergents, surfactants.
And they're EDCs too.
Yes, they're known estrogen mimics. They interfere with reproduction. Studies link exposure to male fertility issues, maybe even breast cancer risk.
What about those older chemicals, the ones that persist? PCBs, dioxins?
The legacy pollutants. We don't produce them like we used to, but they're incredibly persistent. They build up in the environment and the food chain.
And they mess with hormones too.
Definitely. They disrupt thyroid hormones, sex hormones. They're linked to developmental neurotoxicity, immune system problems. Really nasty stuff.
And then there's PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, the forever chemicals.
Right. These are everywhere now. Firefighting foam, non-stick coatings, waterproof fabrics.
And they don't break down.
Hardly at all. That's the problem. They accumulate in the environment and in us, and they get into water sources.
And the health concern.
They're significant. PFAS are endocrine disruptors, linked to metabolic issues, immune problems, altered puberty timing, increased cancer risks, thyroid dysfunction, liver damage, reduced fertility. The list is long and growing.
And standard treatment struggles with these too.
Very much so. They often pass right through conventional sewage treatment. You need advanced methods to really get them out.
One more category, natural hormones. Can they be a problem too?
Surprisingly, yes. Even the hormones we and animals naturally produce, like estrogen and testosterone, get into water via sewage and farm runoff.
And even though they're natural, they can disrupt things.
For aquatic life, absolutely. Natural estrogens are potent EDCs for fish, causing feminization at low levels. For humans, the levels in drinking water are usually thought to be low, but again, lifelong exposure. Could it contribute to hormone-related health effects? It's possible. It's another potential source of endocrine activity in our water.
Okay, so if we put all these categories together, BPA, phthalates, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, industrial chemicals, even natural hormones, it really paints a picture of potential widespread contamination.
It does, and the potential health implications are serious. Links to cancers, developmental issues, reproductive problems, metabolic diseases like diabetes, maybe even neurological effects.
And the really tricky part is the low-dose effect, and the fact that exposure during critical windows, like pregnancy or puberty, might be especially harmful.
Exactly. It underscores the need to minimize these compounds in our drinking water as much as possible.
So that brings us to the next big question. How well do our standard water treatment methods actually do at removing these EDCs?
That's critical. Let's look at the common technologies. First, activated carbon filtration.
Like in those filter pitchers?
Yeah.
Or built into other systems?
Exactly. Granular activated carbon, GAC, or powdered activated carbon, peak-EAT. Carbon is great at absorbing, basically grabbing onto organic molecules.
So it should work for EDCs.
It works quite well for many of them, especially the ones that are more hydrophobic, meaning they don't like water. Things like BPA, hormones, many pesticides, they tend to stick to the carbon surface. PT can be particularly effective at reducing overall endocrine activity. You can get high removal rates, sometimes over 90% for certain EDCs, under the right conditions.
But there's catch you.
There always is, isn't there? It's less effective for more polar EDCs, the ones that dissolve better in water. Some PFAS, certain pharmaceuticals, for example, they don't stick as well.
And the filter gets...
Right. Carbon has a limited capacity. Once the binding sites are used up, it stops working, it saturates, and if you don't replace the filter regularly, breakthrough can happen. EDCs might even start leaching back out. So it's good, but maybe not a complete solution on its own.
Okay, what about reverse osmosis? RO. Some people have these under their sinks.
RO is a powerhouse. It uses pressure to push water through a very fine membrane that blocks almost everything else. Salts, minerals, and yes, most organic molecules, including virtually all EDCs.
How effective?
Very. Typically removes over 95% of steroid hormones, pharmaceuticals, pesticides. It's a strong barrier.
So why don't cities just use RO for all our water?
Well, it's energy intensive. You need high pressure. It also creates a waste stream. The concentrated reject water, or brine, which has all the removed contaminants and needs careful disposal.
And the membranes.
They can get fouled or clogged if the water isn't pre-treated properly. So for large municipal systems, it's often too costly and complex, except maybe for specific uses like desalination. But for home use, those under-sink units provide excellent protection against EDCs.
Got it. What about UV light? We use that for disinfection, right? Killing germs.
Yes, UV is great for inactivating bacteria and viruses. But standard UV disinfection, the kind normally used, isn't very effective at actually breaking down the chemical structure of most EDCs.
So it kills bugs, but not chemicals.
Pretty much. The UV dose and wavelength used for disinfection just doesn't do much to degrade these complex organic molecules. You need much higher doses or different types of UV, or combining UV with oxidants like hydrogen peroxide, that's called advanced oxidation processes, or AOPs.
And that's more complex and expensive.
Correct. So standard UV isn't really relied on for chemical contaminant removal.
Okay, one more. Ozonation, using ozone gas.
Yes, ozone is a very strong oxidant. It can be quite effective at breaking down many EDCs, especially those with certain chemical structures like hormones or phenolic compounds.
Well, it just destroys them.
It can achieve high removal rates, maybe 70, 99% for some EDCs, but again, limitations. Some molecules are ozone resistant, and ozonation can sometimes create unwanted, potentially harmful byproducts.
So you need more treatment after.
Often, yes, like biofiltration or activated carbon to remove byproducts. Plus, generating ozone on site requires significant energy and specialized equipment, so it's expensive. It's a powerful tool, but often part of a multi-step process.
So the takeaway seems to be, while our standard treatments help, none of them are a magic bullet for removing all EDCs completely.
That's a fair summary. Each technology has strengths and weaknesses. Because of these limitations, trace amounts of various EDCs can still make it through into our finished drinking water.
Which really highlights the need for effective filtration right where we use the water at home.
Precisely. And that leads us nicely into discussing the Aquaporin A2O Pure system.
Okay, so this system uses something called a biomimetic membrane. What does biomimetic actually mean here?
It means it mimics biology, biomimicry. In this case, the technology copies how nature filters water at the cellular level using special proteins called aquaporins.
Aquaporins? What are they?
They're amazing natural water channels found in cell membranes, plants, animals, us. Think of them as perfectly designed, incredibly tiny pores or tunnels that only allow water molecules to pass through, single file, very rapidly.
And they block everything else.
Everything else. Salts, sugars, ions. Other molecules are just too big or have the wrong charge to get through these highly selective channels. It's nature's ultimate water filter. The discovery actually won a Nobel Prize back in 2003.
Wow. So how do they get these proteins into a water filter?
Well, a Danish company, Aquaporin AS, developed a way to embed these aquaporin proteins into a stable synthetic polymer membrane. They call this their Aquaporin Inside technology.
So it's like building nature's filter into a man-made one.
Exactly. It creates a type of advanced reverse osmosis membrane that combines the high rejection capabilities of RO with the super efficiency and selectivity of these natural aquaporin channels.
Okay, so how does the A2O Pure system actually work day to day? Walk me through it.
It's a compact unit, usually installed under the kitchen sink, and it's tankless, which is a plus. It uses 3 main filtration stages.
That's one.
First, water goes through a pre-filter. This usually combines sediment removal with activated carbon. It takes out larger particles, chlorine, some initial organic stuff. Basically, it protects the main membrane.
Okay. Stage 2.
That's the heart of the system. The aquaporin inside RO membrane, water is pushed through it. The aquaporin channels let water molecules zip through quickly.
But block the contaminants.
Right. The membrane structure itself blocks larger particles, and the aquaporin channels provide that ultimate barrier against dissolved salts, heavy metals, nitrates, and crucially, those organic micropollutants like EDCs. They're just too bulky to pass through the aquaporin channels. The rejection rate for dissolved solids is typically over 99%.
And the final stage?
Stage 3 is a post-carbon filter. This acts like a final polish, absorbing any lingering trace tastes or odors, ensuring the water tastes really fresh and clean.
And being tankless is good because
It means water is purified on demand right when you turn on the special faucet. There's no stored water sitting in a tank where bacteria could potentially grow over time, which can be a concern with some traditional RO systems.
Okay, makes sense. So the big question, how well does it actually remove these EDCs we've been talking about?
The performance data is really impressive. Because of that biomimetic membrane, it acts as a very robust barrier. Independent tests, plus the company's own research, show it filters out 90 to 99%, sometimes more, of basically all dissolved substances.
Including the tough ones like PFAS.
Yes, especially those. We mentioned PFAS are notoriously hard to remove. Well, research from Aarhus University in 2022 showed 99.9% removal of PFAS using this aquaporin technology. That's extremely high.
Wow. What about other EDCs? Hormones, pesticides?
It's certified to remove pesticides, hormones, pharmaceuticals, even microplastics, typically with effectiveness greater than 90%, often much higher. For many of these contaminants, the levels in the purified water are essentially non-detectable.
So it really gets down to very, very low levels.
It does. It's considered to have some of the highest removal rates across a broad spectrum of contaminants available for home point-of-use systems.
That's quite a claim. Has this tech been used anywhere else really demanding?
Funny you should ask. NASA actually tested aquaporin membrane technology on the International Space Station.
Really? For recycling water up there?
Exactly. And it performed reliably even in microgravity. That says a lot about the robustness and effectiveness of the core technology. It's like harnessing nature's selectivity, but giving it industrial strength durability.
Okay, so how does it compare then to a standard home RO system someone might already have?
Both use RO, so both are generally effective against EDCs, but the Aquaporin biomimetic membrane might offer some advantages.
That is.
Well, because the aquaporin channels are so efficient at transporting water, the system might be able to achieve high purity with potentially lower water pressure, or maybe provide a faster flow rate of purified water. Some users report it's quicker.
Energy efficiency, maybe?
Possibly more energy efficient too, yes.
Ah.
Also, there's a theory that the specific nature of the aquaporin channels might make the membrane less prone to fouling, getting clogged up, which could mean it lasts longer and maintains its high performance better over time.
And the tankless design is a difference too.
Right. The A2O Pure is tankless, often includes leak detectors, automatic flushing cycles, features that enhance safety and hygiene compared to traditional tank-based RO.
But for pure EDC removal, are they comparable?
Both are very good. But the documentation for the aquaporin system often highlights extremely high removal rates, like that 99% figure, even for challenging things like short-chain PFAS. It might have an edge, particularly for some specific emerging contaminants. Plus, it always combines the RO membrane with pre- and post-carbon filters, making it a comprehensive multi-stage approach.
And this isn't just based on the company's own claims. There's independent verification.
Absolutely. The system and the technology have undergone independent lab testing against recognized standards, like NSF standards, for example, for removing a whole host of contaminants, chemicals, heavy metals, microbiological threats.
And people are actually using this?
Oh, yes. As of late 2024, the estimate was over 500,000 households worldwide were using filters with the Aquaporin Inside technology. That shows growing trust and adoption, likely driven by increasing awareness about water quality issues, especially EDCs.
It certainly sounds like a significant step forward in home water purification technology.
It really does seem to be. By cleverly mimicking nature, it appears to offer a very effective solution to tackle the limitations of older methods when it comes to getting these concerning endocrine disruptors out of our drinking water.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've talked about how endocrine disrupting compounds are, well, surprisingly common in water sources.
And the wide range of potential health risks associated with them, even at low levels.
We've also seen that conventional water treatment, while important, doesn't necessarily remove all of them completely. There can be gaps.
Right. Limitations in each technology mean some EDCs can persist.
And then we looked at the Aquaporin A2O Pure system as a really innovative approach,
Right.
using that biomimetic membrane technology inspired by nature.
Exactly. Achieving very high removal rates, near complete removal in some cases, for a broad range of EDCs, including those really persistent ones like PFAS, hormones, pesticides.
It really underscores the value of having advanced filtration right in our homes, doesn't it?
Right.
To ensure the water we're actually drinking is as pure and safe as possible.
It certainly makes a strong case for it.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. It could be worth taking a moment to really consider the water you and your family drink every day. Think about those potential long-term health implications.
Yeah.
And maybe explore the solutions out there, like the Aquaporin system, that really prioritize getting these endocrine-disrupting compounds out of your water. It's about protecting your health in the long run.
That's a great point. Being informed, understanding the risks, and knowing the solutions available, that's empowering. It helps us take control of our indoor environment for better long-term health.